HBO needed to take liberties to tell the story of Chernobyl. It's a story written in the shadow of uncertainty. However, time reveals the details and sometimes story overtakes substance. The Binger is here to give you all those changed details present in the HBO show Chernobyl. The writers worked hard to build characters and arcs that represented this story in a thoughtful way. We want to honor their intention, while also pointing out where the story diverged from the facts. To us, it's the best way to completely grasp the full impact of this event. So get ready for a countdown with all the detail and emotion packed into every entry. To start off this list, let's work off the first episode. We're not alluding to the dark nature of the opening. Everyone who watched the show is aware of what we're referring to in that scene. They both tie in with the time 1:23:45. The moment you see it first with Legasov did occur at that time too. However, the reason the episode is named after that time has to do with the incident. See, the nuclear event occurred at that time, but it's led to a misunderstanding. For many viewers, the time is now probably cemented in your brain. However, it's important to understand that nothing ever centered around that moment. It turns out, the warning alarm didn't go off until a few minutes later. To be exact, the fire alarm was activated at 1:26:03. It's a tiny change in the show that helps the pacing feel rushed. Audiences who tuned into the show probably don't mind the tricky change of time, but it's worth knowing the true reality of the situation. Yes, it's odd that we need to point this out. It's unfortunate that such tiny details need to get changed. In fact, many of the viewers probably didn't even consider this. I mean, who thinks about the smoke in a shot? The answer is the Binger. The Binger thinks about the smoke in a shot. Remember the black smoke billowing out of the plant in that one dark shot? It's not realistic, like, at all. A nuclear reactor doesn't release black smoke. It never does. Reactors typically release pillars of white vapor out into the environment. So while the shot in Chernobyl is ominous, it's not accurate. Clearly, HBO changed it to reflect a sense of doom. It's a nice touch, and fans appreciated it. However, please never think that is normal for any nuclear plant. Don't worry, we're not here to criticize ULANA KHOMYUK as a character. She does an excellent job fortifying her position in the show. The audience understands her desire to understand the incident and the lengths she'll go to find scientific data supporting her disposition. Basically, it's really easy to believe she existed. The truth is, KHOMYUK is fictional in the strictest terms. Yes, the writers made her up. She never existed, and her dialogue is all a way to provide exposition. However, that doesn't make her a worthless character. Turns out, the real reason she's fictionalized is to shorthand an entire group. She's a representative of real people who did the work that we see her performing in the show. She functioned as a version of many scientists and researchers who went on to study the effects of Chernobyl. It's done by one person for the sake of brevity, but it was truly a number of people that made that effort happen. Also, many people might be curious as to why a woman fills that role. It's an interesting question, and it's likely based off our understanding of American culture at this time. However, in the Soviet Union, it was extremely common for women to enter the STEM field. KHOMYUK isn't made as a woman to fulfill some quota in the cast. It's a realistic representation of the scientific field there at that moment in history. Boris Shcherbina is a compelling character in this dramatic story. He turns from bureaucracy to sympathizer over the course of the series. His relationship to the event gives the audience a relatable scope to introduce them all to the wrinkles of the story they're watching. His outwardly skeptic nature softens and works its way into progressive position. The issue takes on a different meaning as he becomes closer to Legasov during the middle episodes. The two work out an understanding, and the audience sees a budding friendship. But that's not the reality. In truth, the two probably did become friends throughout the mutual understanding of the event. However, the discussions we see between them would have happened behind closed doors. HBO had to take creative liberties with the relationship. Unfortunately, the real Boris was a private man who didn't openly discuss his relationships and the impact of Chernobyl as much as we'd like to think. Again, he and Legasov ended up fostering the same point of view, but the flawless character change we see in the series is mostly fictionalized. Talking about this subject can get a little bit ghastly, so we'll spare you the over-the-top details. After all, Chernobyl truly happened. The series isn't depicting a fictionalized story, so when Legasov compares the events at that reactor to the events at Hiroshima, we need to discuss the changes HBO made. Odds are that he never made that comparison. He was a smart man and not the kind of person to toss out factoids like that without thinking about the consequences. We'd be willing to bet it was included solely for the American audience. Now, the audience can understand the impact, however, the line is incorrect. Again, we want to be respectful of the tragedies. The simplest way we can say this is the nuclear outcome in Chernobyl was a long-term effect that provided the most danger. The biggest danger point in Hiroshima was the impact moment. The two things are on opposite ends of the threat spectrum. They're both extremely bad, obviously, but they're bad in different ways. Fighting a fire at a nuclear reactor is difficult. The stakes are already high from that point on. Seriously, we don't think fans needed much more than that. However, for those expecting more things to go wrong, HBO made sure to deliver. Perhaps the reasoning was exactly that. The helicopter crashing during the chaos of the scene adds an element of confusion. It ramps up the suspense. You're not just worried about the fire now, and that means the show has you on the edge of your seat. It's right where they want you. Turns out HBO didn't make that up. A helicopter did make a crash landing on the side of Chernobyl. The problem is, they changed the date of the occasion. The situation was already getting out of hand, so it's safe to say the show used the event to ramp up tension for the viewer. Fans of the show will likely never forget that scene. Just keep in mind the reality was a lot less urgent than what was shown. Every show focused on these kind of perilous situations needs a big moment where the selfless heroes make a big sacrifice. The tank valve scene is one of those moments. We know. The excitement you had for that moment just deflated like a balloon. We're sorry about that, but facts are facts. The scene gives people this patriotic moment to hang their hat on. And it's one of the biggest moments like that in the show. 3 volunteers go down into the radioactive water to open tank valves and prevent a larger incident from occurring. The problem is that one word. Volunteers. According to Alexei Ananenko, one of the men who went down there, it was not an option for him. He was the only engineer on duty who could navigate the team towards the valves. His supervisor told him he couldn't refuse for that reason. It's also worth noting that all 3 men survived the excursion and 2 are still alive to this day. Legasov is an integral part of the show. He's one of the first characters we see in the entire series. We begin to understand his role rather quickly, especially compared to anyone else in the group. In a lot of ways, he's the main protagonist among the many other main characters. They actually included a lot of dialogue from tapes he recorded that are accurate with a capital A. The show creators put a lot of effort into realizing an authentic version of Legasov for the miniseries. However, parts of his story are changed to work with the present drama of the story. The trial scene is a big moment in the series. Here, Legasov stands up to the KGB officials and all of the authority of Russia. He declares his testimony in Vienna was a lie and speaks out as a martyr for his cause. It's intense and touching in ways we can't even begin to describe. Sadly, all of that never happened. It turns out that Legasov was never in the courtroom for that trial. The 3 rootable characters we see in that climactic scene weren't actually there. Legasov only spoke out when it was too late. However, even his letter is changed to fit the show's themes. The questions about truth and honesty were never present in his rebuke. In fact, the show's tagline, "What is the cost of lies?" was never publicly spoken by Legasov. One of the most melodramatic scenes ties into a woman we meet named Lyudmila. Don't worry, she actually existed. She was also actually pregnant during the event in Chernobyl as well. None of that is made up. But some parts of her story are changed for the show. For those unfamiliar with her story, she went to the hospital to visit her husband, who is quarantined there. Originally, she was not permitted to see him due to the unstable environment and the fact that she was pregnant. But the writers gave her a sly bit of dialogue where she tricks the nurses and convinces them that she isn't pregnant. It's clever, but it's also a fictional depiction. The real story is a bit grim. Lyudmila did get through to see her husband, but she simply told the nurse that she already had 2 children. In reality, she was already showing and couldn't lie about her pregnancy. We then see this touching moment as the couple embraces. She's able to hug her husband and even hold his hand. But the truth is, she wasn't allowed to do that. She bribed the doctors to see him and only got 30 minutes to say goodbye. During that time, the doctors didn't permit the 2 to touch because it was too risky. All that was added. The final episode of this series is meant to carry a lot of answers. The trial and events leading up to the event are told congruently. This episode is meant to be the answer to the show provided to the audience about what truly happened at Chernobyl. However, their explanation for Chernobyl is a bit flawed. It appears the writers imply that Dyatlov acts recklessly due to the potential for a promotion. The reality is a lot more complex. For one thing, many more people were on trial than what the scene depicts. And on top of that, the system that built Chernobyl is particularly to blame. The material used to create it was cheap, and the compliant workers were not allowed to deny orders. All of this compounded with other variables to create the situation you see unfold in the early episodes. Chalking it up to a promotion is a tad bit haphazard. Okay, that's all we have for you on this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the Binger. And also, did we miss any key moments that weren't accurate? Let us know down in the comments section. Until next time.